Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. The smell hit Rhett first every morning. Mold mixed with stale cigarettes, and something rotten he couldn't name. The house in Haverhill had been dying slowly for years, just like everything else in his life. Rhett Maddox pressed his face against the cracked window of his bedroom, if the tiny space with water-stained walls could be called that. Outside, Kentucky stretched endlessly in both directions. Fields of brown grass and broken dreams. At 16, he felt older than the hills surrounding their rotting town. "Rhett!" Brock's voice boomed from downstairs. "Get your ass down here." The voice made Rhett's stomach clench. Brock Halley had moved into their house 3 years ago, bringing his golden boy son Wyatt and a truck full of misery. Rhett's mother, Lenora, had been different before Dad died in that factory accident. She used to hum while making breakfast. She used to care. Now she just survived. Rhett pulled on yesterday's jeans and a t-shirt with holes in the sleeves. He walked downstairs to find Brock standing in the kitchen, thick arms crossed over his beer gut. The man was built like a bulldozer, short, wide, and designed for destruction. "About time," Brock grunted. "Wyatt's bathroom needs cleaning. Toilet's backed up again." Wyatt sat at the kitchen table, spooning cereal into his mouth like he was performing for an audience. At 17, he was everything Brock wanted in a son: tall, athletic, with that smug smile that said the world owed him everything. His blonde hair was perfectly styled, even at 7 in the morning. "I cleaned it yesterday," Rhett said. "Did I ask what you did yesterday?" Brock stepped closer. His breath smelled like whiskey and decay. "I said clean it. Now. Why can't Wyatt clean his own bathroom?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Wyatt stopped eating and looked up, grinning like Christmas morning had arrived early. Brock's face darkened. "Because he's the king. You clean his toilet." "That's right, servant boy," Wyatt said, leaning back in his chair. "Get to work." Rhett's hands curled into fists. The rage burned in his chest like acid. But he knew better than to fight. Not yet. His mother appeared in the doorway, thin and hollow-eyed. She wore a faded bathrobe and looked 10 years older than her 42 years. "Just do what he says, Rhett," Lenora said without meeting his eyes. "Don't make trouble. Listen to your mama," Brock said. "She knows what's good for you." Rhett stared at his mother. Once, she would have stood up for him. Once, she would have told any man to go to hell before letting him treat her son like dirt. That woman was gone, buried with his father in Haverhill Cemetery. "Fine," Rhett said. He walked upstairs to the bathroom Wyatt used. The toilet was clogged with God knew what. The floor was covered in muddy footprints. Wet towels lay in a pile by the door. It looked like a hurricane had hit. Rhett grabbed the plunger and went to work. Each push reminded him of his place in this house. Servant. Slave. Less than nothing. Downstairs, he could hear Brock praising Wyatt for some meaningless achievement. "That's my boy. My little king." The words made Rhett want to break something. Instead, he scrubbed harder. When he finished, Wyatt was waiting in the hallway. "Took you long enough," Wyatt said. "Next time, move faster. Kings don't like to wait." Rhett pushed past him without speaking. "Hey," Wyatt grabbed his arm. "I'm talking to you." "Let go." "Make me." For a moment, they stared at each other. Wyatt was bigger, but Rhett had grown up fighting. His father had taught him to box before the accident. But fighting back would only make things worse for his mother. Rhett pulled free and walked away. "That's right, run away," Wyatt called after him. Just like always. The rest of the day crawled by like a funeral procession. Rhett did his regular chores: dishes, laundry, taking out trash. Meanwhile, Wyatt played video games and complained about everything. "This house is boring," Wyatt announced at dinner. "All my friends have pools. Maybe next summer," Brock said, cutting his steak. After the renovation business picks up, Brock ran a small construction company that barely stayed afloat. Half his workers were ex-cons who showed up drunk. The other half quit within a month. "What about Rhett?" Wyatt asked. "He could dig us a pool. He likes digging, right? That's what servants do." "Good thinking, son." Rhett stabbed his mashed potatoes and said nothing. His mother sat at the end of the table like a ghost, picking at her food. After dinner, Brock turned on some cop show while Wyatt played on his phone. Rhett started clearing the table. "Leave that," his mother said quietly. "I'll do it later." But later never came. Later had been coming for 3 years, and Rhett was tired of waiting. He was loading the dishwasher when he heard the crash from the living room. "Damn it!" Brock shouted. Rhett walked to the doorway. Chili covered the coffee table, the couch, and the carpet. Wyatt sat in the middle of the mess, bowl overturned in his lap. Wyatt knocked over his food. Brock said, "Clean it up." "I didn't mean to," Wyatt said with that innocent smile. "My hand slipped." Rhett looked at the mess. Red sauce everywhere. It would take an hour to clean properly. And for what? So Wyatt could make another mess tomorrow. "Clean it yourself," Rhett said. The room went dead quiet. Even the TV seemed to lower its volume. Brock stood up slowly. "What did you say?" "You made the mess." "Clean it up." "I made the mess." Wyatt laughed. "I don't clean messes, servant boy. That's your job." "Not anymore." Brock's face turned purple. "You ungrateful little bastard. After everything we've done for you." "Done for me?" Rhett's voice rose. "You've done nothing but make my life hell." "That's enough." Brock lunged forward and grabbed Rhett by the shirt. "You want to run your mouth? Let's see how tough you are." He dragged Rhett toward the hallway. Rhett tried to pull free, but Brock was stronger. The man had 20 years and 50 pounds on him. "Brock, stop," Lenora said from the kitchen doorway. But her voice was weak, defeated. "Stay out of this," Brock snarled. "Boy needs to learn respect." He shoved Rhett against the wall and started unbuckling his belt. The leather made a singing sound as it slid through the loops. "Turn around," Brock ordered. "Go to hell." The first hit caught Rhett across the shoulder. Fire exploded down his arm. The second hit landed on his back. The third on his ribs. "Stop." Rhett twisted away and ran for the front door. Brock caught him before he reached the handle. They struggled, crashing into the coat closet. Hangers scattered across the floor. "Hold still, you little shit." Rhett threw an elbow that connected with Brock's jaw. The man cursed and shoved him backward. Rhett's back hit the cabinet hard. Then his arm twisted at the wrong angle as he fell. The snap was loud as a gunshot. Pain ripped through Rhett's body like lightning. He screamed and clutched his arm. It hung at an impossible angle, already swelling. "Jesus," Brock said, stepping back. "Jesus Christ." Lenora ran over. "Rhett." "Oh God, Rhett. It's broken," Rhett gasped. Each breath felt like drowning. "My arm is broken. We need to get him to a hospital," Lenora said. "No hospitals," Brock said quickly. "They'll ask questions. His arm is broken. It's just a sprain." He's being dramatic. Rhett tried to stand. The movement sent fresh waves of agony through his body. His vision went black around the edges. "Please," he whispered. "It hurts so bad." "Should have thought of that before you got smart with me," Brock said. "Maybe some time alone will teach you manners." He grabbed Rhett's good arm and dragged him toward the laundry room. The small space smelled like bleach and damp clothes. "Stay in there until you learn some respect," Brock said. He slammed the door and turned the lock. Rhett collapsed against the washing machine. His broken arm throbbed with every heartbeat. In the darkness, he could hear muffled voices from the living room. "We can't leave him in there," his mother said. "Watch me," Brock replied. "Kid thinks he's tough? Let's see how tough he is after a night in timeout." The voices faded. Footsteps went upstairs. The house grew quiet except for Rhett's ragged breathing. He pressed his back against the cool metal of the dryer and closed his eyes. The pain was everything now. His whole world shrunk down to the fire in his arm. Hours passed. The digital clock on the dryer read 11:47 p.m., then 12:23 a.m., then 1:15 a.m. Nobody came. By 3 a.m. Rhett knew he was going to die in this room. The pain in his arm had turned into something deeper, something that made his whole body shake. He needed help, real help, and he wasn't going to get it here. He stood up carefully, cradling his broken arm against his chest. The laundry room had one small window that faced the backyard. It was narrow, but he was thin. He might fit. The window latch was stiff and hurt to turn with his good hand. When it finally opened, cold night air rushed in. October in Kentucky was bitter, especially in the mountains. Rhett looked down. The drop was maybe 6 feet to the ground. With a good arm, it would be nothing. With a broken one, it might as well be the Grand Canyon. He had no choice. He climbed onto the dryer, then onto the windowsill. His feet dangled outside. The grass below looked soft, but he knew better. Kentucky ground was hard as concrete this time of year. "Please don't let me die," he whispered. He pushed off and fell. The landing sent shockwaves through his body. He rolled onto his side and vomited into the grass. When the nausea passed, he forced himself to stand. The house loomed behind him, dark except for Brock and Wyatt's bedroom windows. They were probably sleeping peacefully, dreaming of tomorrow's cruelties. Rhett stumbled toward the road. He had no shoes, no jacket, and exactly $1 in his sock lunch money from 3 days ago. His arm hung useless at his side, but he was free. The walk to the highway took forever. Every step shot pain up his arm and into his shoulder. By the time he reached the main road, the sun was starting to rise. Pink light crept over the hills like spilled paint. Rhett sat on a guardrail and waited. Traffic was light this early, mostly truckers and shift workers heading to the plant in the next county. A big rig approached from the east, engine rumbling like thunder. Rhett stood and raised his good arm. For a moment, he thought the truck would pass him by. Then the air brakes hissed, and it pulled over. The driver was an older man with gray stubble and kind eyes. He looked Rhett up and down the torn shirt, the swollen arm, the bare feet. "You in some kind of trouble, son? I need a ride," Rhett said. "As far as you'll go." The driver studied him for a long moment. "What's your name?" "Rhett." "I'm Reuben." "Where you headed, Rhett?" "Away from here." Reuben nodded like that was answer enough. "Climb in. I'm going to Ash Creek." "That work for you?" Rhett had never heard of Ash Creek, but anywhere was better than here. "Yeah, that works." The truck cab was warm and smelled like coffee and cigarettes. Reuben didn't ask any more questions, just put the truck in gear and pulled back onto the highway. Rhett watched Haverhill disappear in the side mirror. The broken-down houses, the rusted cars, the cemetery where his father was buried. All of it shrinking to nothing. "You hungry?" Reuben asked, pulling a sandwich from cooler. Rhett realized he was starving. He hadn't eaten since dinner yesterday. "Thanks." The sandwich was turkey and cheese on white bread. It tasted like the best meal he'd ever had. "That arm looks bad," Reuben said. "It's broken." "Figured. You need a doctor." "I need a lot of things." Reuben glanced at him. "Running from family?" Rhett nodded. "They'll look for you. Let them look." Something in his voice made Reuben study him again. The boy's eyes held no fear, no sadness. Just cold, hard anger. "You're not going back, are you?" "Not until I'm ready," Rhett said. "What happens when you're ready?" Rhett stared out the window at the passing landscape. Mountains and valleys, farms and forests. A whole world beyond Haverhill's borders. "They'll pay for what they did to me." The words were soft, but certain. Reuben felt a chill run down his spine. He'd seen plenty of runaway kids over the years. Most were scared, desperate, broken. This one was different. This one was planning something. Ash Creek was bigger than Haverhill, but not by much. Main Street had a diner, a hardware store, and a garage with Nix's Automotive painted in red letters across the front. The rest of the town spread out in lazy circles, residential streets, lined with modest houses and chain-link fences. Reuben dropped Rhett off at the diner. "You sure you don't want me to take you to a hospital?" "I'm sure." The old trucker reached into his wallet and pulled out a 20. "Take this." "I don't need charity." "It's not charity. It's a loan. Pay me back when you're older." Reuben pressed the bill into Rhett's good hand. "Be careful, son. World's hard enough without making it harder." The truck pulled away with a rumble of diesel exhaust. Rhett stood on the sidewalk, suddenly feeling very alone. His arm throbbed, and exhaustion hit him like a sledgehammer. He'd been running on adrenaline for hours, but now his body was crashing. He pushed through the diner's front door. The place was nearly empty, just an old man reading a newspaper and a woman in work clothes drinking coffee. The waitress behind the counter looked up as he entered. "Kitchen's closed, honey, but I can get you coffee." Rhett made it 3 steps before his legs gave out. The floor rushed up to meet him, and everything went black. That he woke up in a small room that smelled like motor oil and welding smoke. Sunlight streamed through a dirty window. His arm was in a makeshift sling made from torn bedsheets. "About time you woke up." Rhett turned his head. A woman sat in a folding chair beside the bed. She was maybe 35, with short dark hair and tattoos covering both arms. Her hands were stained with grease, and she wore coveralls with NIX embroidered on the pocket. Who are you? Rhett asked. Nicolette Garrison. People call me Nix. You're in my place. Rhett tried to sit up. Pain shot through his arm, but it was manageable now. What happened to me? You passed out in Pearl's diner. She called me because she didn't know what else to do with you. Nix leaned forward. That arm's broken bad. My friend Dante said it best he could, but you need a real doctor. No doctors. Figured you'd say that. Most kids who end up here feel the same way. She studied his face. How old are you? 16. Where you from? Haverhill. That's a long way to walk with a busted wing. Who did this to you? Rhett met her eyes. They were sharp and knowing, like she'd seen every kind of trouble the world had to offer. My stepfather. Nix nodded. He beat you regular? Every chance he got. And your mama? She let him. Yeah, they usually do. Nix stood up and walked to the window. You hungry? Jory made soup. Who's Jory? Another kid who ended up here. Come on, let's get some food in you. The room was above Nix's garage. Below, car engines and power tools created a symphony of mechanical noise. Nix led him down a narrow staircase to a small kitchen area behind the work bays. Two teenagers sat at a folding table. One was a girl about Rhett's age with anxious eyes and brown hair pulled back in a ponytail. The other was a boy, maybe 14, thin and wiry with quick hands that never stopped moving. Rhett, meet Jory and Milo, Nix said. Kids, this is Rhett. Jory looked up from her bowl. How's your arm? Hurts. Dante did a good job setting it, she said. He was a medic in the army. Milo studied Rhett like he was sizing up a potential threat. Where you from? Haverhill. Never heard of it. Consider yourself lucky. Nix ladled soup into a bowl and set it in front of Rhett. It was chicken noodle, simple but hot. He realized he hadn't eaten since the sandwich in Ruben's truck. So what's your story? Milo asked. Parents beat you? Stepdad touch you? Uncle get weird? Milo, Jory said sharply. Leave him alone. What? We all got stories. Might as well share. Rhett ate his soup and said nothing. These kids seemed nice enough, but he didn't know them. Trust was something he couldn't afford right now. Nick sat down across from him. You don't have to talk about it, but you should know everyone here ran from something. Jory's hiding from her step-uncle, who couldn't keep his hands to himself. Milo's mom's boyfriend liked to use him as a punching bag. This is a safe place, but it's not permanent. Eventually, you'll need a plan. I have a plan. Yeah? What's that? Rhett looked up from his soup. His eyes were cold as winter stones. I'm going back to make them pay. The room went quiet except for the mechanical sounds from the garage below. Jory and Milo exchanged glances. Pay how? Nix asked. I don't know yet, but they will. Rhett spent the next week healing and thinking. Nix put him to work organizing tools and cleaning parts, simple jobs he could do one-handed. The work kept his mind busy during the day, but at night, the anger burned in his chest like a furnace. He thought about Brock's smug face. Wyatt's entitled smirk. His mother's hollow eyes and broken promises. They thought he was gone for good, probably celebrating their freedom from the troublemaker. They were wronged, and on his 8th day in Ash Creek, Rhett found what he was looking for. Jory was in the kitchen reading a newspaper when he came down for breakfast. Anything interesting? He asked. She held up the local section. Just the usual stuff. Town council meeting, high school sports scores. She flipped the page. Oh, here's something. Remember that story about the mayor's brother getting arrested for embezzling? This reporter exposed the whole thing. Rhett looked at the byline. Sheila Miles, staff writer. She's good, Jory continued. Really good at digging up dirt on people who think they're untouchable. What kind of dirt? All kinds. Corrupt politicians, crooked cops, child welfare failures. She wrote this series last year about kids falling through the cracks of the foster system. Won some award for it. Rhett studied the article. The writing was sharp, focused, angry in all the right ways. This Sheila Miles person cared about kids like him. You know how to contact reporters? He asked. Sure. Email, phone mail. What? Just curious. That afternoon, Rhett walked to the public library on Elm Street. The building was old but well-maintained, with computer terminals and quiet study areas. He sat at a terminal and started typing. First, he searched for information about CPS reporting procedures, anonymous tips, documentation requirements, evidence standards. He read everything twice, taking mental notes. Next, he researched Sheila Miles. She'd been writing for the Ash Creek Tribune for 5 years. Before that, she'd worked for papers in Louisville and Nashville, always focusing on social justice issues. Her email address was listed on the Tribune's website. Rhett opened a new document and began writing. Not an email, those could be traced. A letter. Handwritten. Personal. He wrote about the beatings, the verbal abuse, being locked in a laundry room with a broken arm, his mother's failure to protect him, Wyatt's treatment like a king while Rhett was forced to clean his toilet. He wrote about the smell of mold and decay in the house, the way Brock's eyes went dead when he hit, the sound his arm made when it snapped, the walk to the highway in bare feet. By the time he finished, his good hand was cramping. The letter was 6 pages long, detailed and precise. But words alone wouldn't be enough. He needed proof. That evening, he asked Jory to help him take pictures of his injuries. The bruises had faded to yellow and green, but the break in his arm was obvious even through the makeshift sling. "What's this for?" she asked, adjusting the angle of her phone's camera. "Insurance," Rhett said. Over the next few days, he wrote more letters. One to CPS in the county where Haverhill was located. Another to the school district he'd missed 3 weeks of classes, and nobody had bothered to check on him. A third to the local police department. But the most important letter went to someone else entirely. Maureen Glass lived 2 houses down from Rhett's family in Haverhill. She was 67 years old, a retired teacher who kept to herself and tended her garden. She also had security cameras all around her property, Ring doorbells, motion sensors, the works. Rhett had seen her watching from her window during some of Brock's worst episodes. She never called the police or knocked on the door. She just watched and did nothing. But she saw everything. He found her address in the online phone directory and crafted his letter carefully. Not accusatory that would make her defensive. Instead, he appealed to her conscience. Mrs. Glass, you know me as Rhett Maddox from down the street. I used to help you carry groceries sometimes when I was younger. You always gave me cookies at Christmas. I'm writing to tell you I ran away from home 3 weeks ago. My stepfather Brock broke my arm during a beating and locked me in the laundry room overnight. I had to crawl out a window to escape. I know you saw things over the years. I know you have cameras. I'm not asking you to get involved or put yourself at risk. But if you have footage of what happened, it could help protect other kids from going through what I did. My address is below if you want to help. If not, I understand. Thank you for the cookies. Rhett, he mailed the letter on a Tuesday. By Friday, he'd forgotten about it. Assuming Maureen would do what she always did, nothing. He was working in the garage, sorting bolts, when Nix called him over to the front office. "Package for you," she said. The box was small and unmarked except for his name and address written in shaky handwriting. Inside was a thumb drive and a note. "Rhett, I'm sorry never helped you. I was afraid, and that's no excuse. You were just a child. The drive contains footage from my cameras over the past year. October 15th shows what happened to your arm. There's other incidents too. I hope this helps you find justice. Glassp.s. I still have cookies if you ever want to visit." Rhett stared at the drive. Proof. Real, undeniable proof of what Brock had done to him. He borrowed Jory's laptop that evening and plugged in the drive. The files were organized by date, each one labeled with a timestamp. He found October 15th and clicked play. The video showed Brock dragging him out of the house by his shirt collar. Even with no audio, the violence was obvious. The way Rhett's body twisted, the unnatural angle of his arm, Brock's rage-filled face. There were other files. August 3rd showed Brock shoving him against a car. September 22nd captured him being forced to carry heavy tools while Wyatt sat on the porch laughing. Each video was a nail in Brock's coffin. Rhett copied the files to a separate drive and wrote a detailed timeline of events. Dates, times, witnesses. He printed photos of his injuries and medical records from Dante's makeshift treatment. Then he sat down and wrote the letter that would change everything. Ms. Miles, my name is Rhett Maddox. I'm 16 years old, and I have a story you need to hear. For 3 years, my stepfather Brock Halley has physically and emotionally abused me in our home in Haverhill, Kentucky. He calls my stepbrother Wyatt the king and forces me to clean his toilet and wait on him like a servant. When I finally refused, Brock beat me with a belt and broke my arm. Then he locked me in a laundry room overnight that I have video evidence of the abuse. I have medical records. I have witness testimony. I have everything you need to expose what happened. But I'm not just writing to tell my story. I'm writing because there are other kids in Haverhill living in the same hell I escaped. Kids who can't crawl out windows or hitch rides to safety. Kids who need someone to speak for them. Brock Halley runs a construction business. He's respected in the community. People think he's a good man who took in his wife's troubled son. They don't know he's a monster that I want the world to know the truth. I want him to face consequences. And I want every kid suffering in silence to see that escape is possible, that MY contact information is below. I have boxes of evidence ready to share. Please help me. Rhett Maddox. He mailed the letter along with copies of the most damaging photos and videos. Then he waited. The call came 3 days later. Is this Rhett Maddox? The voice was professional but warm. Yes. This is Sheila Miles from the Ash Creek Tribune. I received your letter. Rhett's heart started pounding. Yeah, I'd like to meet with you. What you sent me, it's extensive, detailed. If even half of it is true, it's one of the worst cases of child abuse I've ever documented. It's all true. I believe you. When can we talk? They met at a coffee shop downtown. Sheila was younger than Rhett had expected, maybe early 30s, with fierce eyes and a notebook full of questions. She listened to his story without interrupting, taking notes and asking for clarification on dates and details. The video evidence is remarkable, she said. Most abuse cases come down to he said, she said. But this is ironclad. So you'll write about it? More than that. I'm going to make sure everyone in Kentucky knows what happened to you. She leaned forward. But I need you to understand, once this story comes out, there's no going back. Your stepfather will face criminal charges. Your family's life will be turned upside down. Are you ready for that? Rhett thought about Brock's face when the bell came off. Wyatt's smug smile. His mother's defeated silence. I've been ready since the day I crawled out that window. Good, because we're going to burn their world down. The story hit the front page of the Sunday Tribune on November 21st. Above the fold, in bold letters, the boy who cleaned a king's toilet. Inside, one teen's escape from a family of abuse. Rhett bought 3 copies from the newsstand outside Pearl's Diner. His hands shook as he read the article. Sheila had captured every detail: the beatings, the verbal abuse, the broken arm, the midnight escape. She'd interviewed Dante about treating his injuries and included quotes from child welfare experts about the long-term effects of domestic abuse. But the most powerful part was the sidebar, a timeline of incidents with corresponding video timestamps and medical documentation. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. Holy shit, Milo said, reading over his shoulder. This is front-page news? Regional story, Jory corrected. The Tribune covers 3 counties. That's a lot of people. Nix took the paper and whistled. Kid, you just declared war on your whole family. Good, Rhett said. His phone buzzed. The number was local but unfamiliar. Rhett? This is Detective Sarah Morrison with the Haverhill Police Department. I need to speak with you about allegations against Brock Halley. What kind of allegations? The kind that lead to arrest warrants. Can you come in for an interview? Rhett looked at Nix, who nodded encouragingly. I'll be there tomorrow. By Monday morning, the story had exploded beyond the Tribune. Local TV stations picked it up. Radio hosts discussed it during drive-time shows. Social media buzzed with outrage and support that Rhett's phone rang constantly. Reporters wanting follow-up interviews. Advocates offering help. Strangers expressing sympathy or sharing their own abuse stories. But the call he'd been waiting for came Tuesday afternoon. Rhett. His mother's voice was barely a whisper. Rhett, is that you? Hello, Mom. Why did you do this to us? Why did you write those lies? They're not lies. Brock was arrested this morning. They took him away in handcuffs. The whole neighborhood saw. Wyatt's been suspended from school. I lost my job because people keep calling and harassing my boss. Rhett felt no sympathy. How does it feel to have your life turn upside down? You've destroyed us. Destroyed our family. What family? You mean the one where I was beaten daily? Where I had to clean Wyatt's toilet because he was the king? Where you watched me get my arm broken and said nothing? Lenora started crying. I was trying to keep us together. I was trying to survive. You were trying to survive. What about me? Come home, Rhett. Please. We can fix this. I am home, and there's nothing to fix. You made your choice 3 years ago when you let that animal move in. Now you get to live with the consequences. He hung up. Wednesday brought more news. Wyatt's private school had expelled him after parents complained about having that boy around their children. The Southeastern Regional Prep League suspended his eligibility for all sports. College recruiters stopped calling. Brock's construction business was hemorrhaging clients. 3 employees quit rather than be associated with him. The bank froze his accounts pending the outcome of the criminal case. Thursday's Tribune ran a follow-up story. Community rallies around abuse survivor. It featured quotes from Haverhill residents who'd suspected something was wrong but never spoken up. Teachers who'd noticed Rhett's injuries. Neighbors who'd heard the screaming through the walls. Were they when I needed help? Rhett asked Sheila over the phone. Same place they always are, she replied, waiting for someone else to take the first step. By Friday, CPS had opened a formal investigation. The district attorney announced that Brock would be charged with multiple counts of child abuse and neglect. A grand jury would convene the following month. Rhett sat in Nix's kitchen that evening, surrounded by newspaper clippings and printouts of online articles. His story had traveled far beyond Kentucky. National news outlets were picking it up. Child advocacy groups were using it as an example of systemic failures. How does it feel? Jory asked. Getting justice? Rhett considered the question. Justice? Was that what this was? Or just revenge dressed up in newspaper headlines? It feels like the beginning, he said. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for December 15th at the Haverhill County Courthouse. Rhett took a bus from Ash Creek, arriving early to watch the proceedings from the gallery. The courthouse was older than dirt, with marble floors and tall windows that let in cold winter light. Reporters packed the front rows, cameras ready to capture every moment of Brock Halley's downfall. Rhett found a seat near the back and waited. Brock entered through a side door, flanked by his public defender. 3 months of jail had aged him years. His hair was grayer, his face thinner, his eyes haunted. The orange jumpsuit made him look small and ordinary. Gone was the intimidating bulldozer who'd terrorized Rhett for 3 years. This was just a broken man facing the consequences of his choices. Their eyes met across the courtroom. Brock's face crumpled with something that might have been regret or fear. Rhett felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The hearing was brief and procedural. The prosecutor outlined the charges: 3 counts of aggravated child abuse, 2 counts of criminal neglect, 1 count of false imprisonment. Brock's lawyer entered a plea of not guilty and requested bail reduction. Given the severity of the charges and the defendant's history of violence, the judge said bail will remain at $50,000. Trial is set for March 1st. The gavel fell. Brock was led away in shackles. Rhett followed the crowd outside, where reporters were interviewing anyone willing to talk. He was about to slip away when a familiar voice called his name. Rhett. He turned to see his mother pushing through the crowd. Behind her came Wyatt, looking sullen and uncomfortable in an ill-fitting suit. Wait, Lenora called. Please, just wait. Rhett stopped on the courthouse steps. Camera crews turned toward them, sensing drama. I need to talk to you, his mother said. Somewhere private. Anything you want to say, you can say here. She glanced nervously at the cameras. Her face was thinner than he remembered, carved with new lines of stress and exhaustion. You're destroying us, she whispered. Can't you see that? We're losing everything. Good. How can you be so cold? I'm your mother. Are you? Rhett stepped closer. Because mothers protect their children. They don't watch them get beaten and say nothing. They don't choose some man over their own son. I was scared. I was 16. I was scared too. But I didn't have anyone to protect me. Wyatt pushed forward. This is bullshit. Dad never hurt you that bad. You're just being dramatic. The cameras swung toward him, and Rhett saw his opportunity. Still feel like a king? He asked loudly enough for the microphones to pick up that Wyatt's face flushed red. Fuck you. That's the future college athlete. Ladies and gentlemen, Rhett announced to the reporters. The boy who couldn't clean his own toilet because he was too good for manual labor. You little shit. Wyatt lunged forward. Two deputies stepped between them before he could reach Rhett. The cameras captured everything: Wyatt's rage, Lenora's tears, Rhett's cold composure. "Still think this was about chores?" Rhett asked the crowd. "Still think I was just a troubled teenager making up stories?" The reporters fired questions at all three of them, but Rhett was already walking away. He'd said what he came to say. Behind him, he could hear his mother calling his name. The sound followed him down the street like a ghost, but he didn't turn around. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Rhett testified for 6 hours, walking the jury through every detail of his 3-year nightmare. The defense attorney tried to paint him as a troubled teen with a history of behavioral problems, but the video evidence was too damning to overcome. Maureen Glass testified about what she'd witnessed from her window. Dante explained the extent of Rhett's injuries. Sheila read excerpts from her interviews with Haverhill residents who'd suspected abuse but done nothing. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Brock Halley was sentenced to 12 years in state prison. The judge called his crimes systematic and sadistic and recommended he serve the full sentence without possibility of early parole. Lenora avoided prison but pled guilty to criminal neglect and child endangerment. She received 5 years probation and was required to attend parenting classes and counseling. The CPS investigation concluded that she'd failed to protect her minor child from known abuse. Though Rhett was now 17 and legally able to make his own decisions, the state mandated that she could have no unsupervised contact with children under 18. Wyatt faced no criminal charges. He'd never directly abused Rhett, but his life imploded anyway. The private school expulsion stood. No college would touch him after the publicity. His sports career was over before it began. The family lost the house to legal fees and lost income. Lenora moved into a 1-bedroom apartment across town. Wyatt got a job at a fast food restaurant, making $8 an hour and living with his aunt. The golden boy was now just another nobody working the night shift, serving customers who sometimes recognized him from the news coverage and whispered behind his back. Rhett heard about it all through Sheila, who'd become a friend and informal mentor. She kept him updated on the fallout, though he rarely asked for details. "Your stepbrother applied to community college," she mentioned during one of their coffee meetings. "Under his mother's maiden name. Good for him. You don't sound like you care." "I don't. He's not my problem anymore." "And your mother?" Rhett sipped his coffee and watched traffic pass outside the window. "What about her?" "She's been calling the Tribune asking for your contact information. Says she wants to make amends." "Did you give it to her?" "Of course not. But she seemed broken. She was broken before I left." "That's not my fault." Sheila studied his face. At 17, Rhett had developed the hard edges of someone much older. His experiences had carved away any softness, leaving behind something cold and unforgiving. "Don't you think people deserve second chances?" she asked. "Some people, maybe. Not her. Not them. That's a heavy burden to carry." "What burden?" "I'm free. They're the ones in prison." It was true. While Brock sat in a cell and his family picked up the pieces of their destroyed life, Rhett was building something new. He'd legally emancipated himself with help from advocates who'd read his story. Nix had offered him permanent housing above the garage in exchange for work. He'd gotten his GED and was planning to take community college classes in the fall. Mechanical engineering, maybe, or journalism like Sheila. He hadn't decided yet. The important thing was that he had choices now. For the first time in 3 years, he could make decisions about his own life without fear of consequences. People around Ash Creek knew his story. Some treated him like a hero, the boy who'd stood up to his abusers and won. Others kept their distance, unsure how to act around someone who'd been through so much trauma. Rhett preferred the distance. He'd learned not to trust easily, not to depend on others for protection or validation. The only person he could count on was himself. But sometimes, late at night in his small room above the garage, he wondered what would have happened if things had been different. If his father hadn't died. If his mother had been stronger. If someone had intervened earlier. The wondering never lasted long. What ifs were useless. Reality was all that mattered. And the reality was simple. He'd survived. They'd suffered. Justice had been served. That was enough. 1 year after the trial, Rhett was walking through downtown Ash Creek when he saw a familiar face outside the library. Wyatt Halley stood near the bus stop, wearing a faded work uniform and looking older than his 19 years. Their eyes met across the street. For a moment, neither moved. Then Wyatt crossed over. Rhett, Wyatt. They stood facing each other on the sidewalk. Passers-by hurried past, oblivious to the history between them. I heard you're going to college, Wyatt said. Community college. Part-time. That's good. That's really good. Wyatt looked down at his shoes. They were scuffed work boots, nothing like the expensive sneakers he'd worn in high school. I wanted to say something, he continued. About everything that happened. Yeah, I didn't know it was that bad. The stuff Dad did to you. I mean, I knew he was hard on you, but I didn't know about the hitting. The broken arm. All of it. Rhett studied his former stepbrother. Wyatt's face had lost its boyish arrogance. Working minimum-wage jobs and living with relatives had humbled him in ways that 3 years of privilege never could. You live in the same house, Rhett said. You knew. I was stupid. Selfish. I thought it was just normal discipline. My dad was always rough around the edges. Your dad broke my arm and locked me in a room overnight. Wyatt flinched. I know that now. And I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry. The apology hung between them like smoke. Rhett felt no satisfaction in hearing it, no sense of closure or peace. It was just words from someone who'd lost everything and was trying to make sense of the wreckage. Are you expecting forgiveness? Rhett asked. I don't know. Maybe. I hope. I don't forgive you. I don't forgive your father. I don't forgive my mother. What happened to me doesn't get erased by apologies. Wyatt's shoulders slumped. Then why are you talking to me? Because I want you to understand something. Rhett stepped closer. You call me a servant. You made me clean your toilet because you thought you were better than me. You thought you were a king. I was wrong. Yes, you were. But not for the reasons you think. Wyatt looked confused. You weren't wrong because all people are equal, Rhett continued. You weren't wrong because everyone deserves respect. You were wrong because you picked the wrong person to treat like dirt. The words were quiet but razor sharp. I survived everything your father did to me. I escaped. I fought back. I destroyed your whole family's life with nothing but the truth and some video footage. Rhett smiled coldly. Kings don't do that. Kings sit on thrones and give orders. But survivors? Survivors burn kingdoms to the ground. Wyatt stared at him, finally understanding. I'm not the servant in this story, Rhett said. I never was. I'm the one still standing while your kingdom turns to ash. He walked away without another word, leaving Wyatt alone at the bus stop. That evening, Rhett sat on the small balcony outside his room, watching the sun set over Ash Creek. The town wasn't much, just another small Kentucky city full of people trying to get by. But it was his now, his choice, his life. Nix came up the stairs carrying 2 beers. Thought you might want company, she said, settling into the plastic chair beside him. Thanks. They sat in comfortable silence, watching cars pass on the street below. Nix had become something like a mother figure to him, though neither of them used that word. She provided stability without judgment, support without strings attached. Jory's going to nursing school, she said. Got accepted to the program at Eastern Kentucky. That's good. She'll be good at that. Milo's thinking about trade school. Welding maybe. And you? Me? I'm thinking about expanding the shop. Maybe hiring another mechanic. She glanced at him. Know anyone who's good with his hands and doesn't mind getting dirty? Rhett smiled a real smile this time, not the cold one he'd given Wyatt. I might know someone. Good. Because I'd hate to train some stranger when I've got a perfectly good apprentice right here. They drank their beers and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Somewhere in Haverhill, Brock was serving his sentence. Lenora was trying to rebuild her life. Wyatt was learning what it meant to work for everything he got. Rhett didn't think about them often anymore. They were part of his past, not his future. He'd gotten his revenge complete, devastating, final. Now, he could focus on building something new. You know what I realized today, he said. What's that? I spent 3 years thinking I was powerless, thinking I was trapped, but I wasn't. I always had power. I just had to figure out how to use it. Nix nodded. Power's funny that way. Most people don't recognize it when they have it. I won't make that mistake again. No, I don't think you will. The sky darkened to purple, then black. Stars appeared one by one, distant and cold but beautiful. Rhett finished his beer and stood up to go inside. Rhett, Nix called after him. You're not like the other kids who end up here. You know that, right? How so? Most of them just want to survive. You didn't just survive. You turned around and burned the whole damn house down. He paused in the doorway, considering her words. He called himself a king, Rhett said finally. But I'm the one still standing. He went inside, leaving Nix alone with the stars and the quiet satisfaction of watching a broken boy become something stronger than his captors ever imagined. In the darkness, Ash Creek settled into sleep around them, a small town harboring big dreams, broken families, and the occasional story of someone who refused to stay down. Rhett Maddox was writing his own ending now, one choice at a time, and he would never clean another king's toilet again.